So I'm Mike Fuller, the CTO of the FinOps Foundation. I'm also the chairperson of the Focus Steering Committee, and probably know me from writing some books sometime.
Rob? And from being on stage this morning in the big room. And I'm Rob Martin, and I am artificially intelligent. I've been in charge of supporting the AI working group for the past little while in my role as fellow at the FinOps Foundation. I'm also newly the executive director of the ITAM Forum. So any of you who are doing both ITAM and FinOps, please see me after the conference. In April, we picked this title, Onboarding Your AI Hire, because some really intelligent people at the Harvard Business Review said you should think about AI agents in your team as team members. So we thought that was a great concept that we wanted to really build upon. But the AI world moves really quickly. And in May, some really intelligent people at a place called the Harvard Business Review said you really shouldn't treat your AI agents as employees. But we still thought that there was some value in kind of keeping that analogy together, because it's not really a metaphor, it's really like a skill that you have, right? You've all onboarded people into your teams in the past. You know how to bring on a human onto your team. And so if you apply the discipline, that same process here, you will avoid some of the most costly AI mistakes. But there are important differences as well, and knowing those keeps you from getting burned. But before we start, I wanted to ask a couple of questions to level set. Who in here is using an AI tool in your FinOps practice today?
Pretty good mix.
Pretty good number. If any of you didn't raise your hand, please see me after class. That was expected.
So I guess for how many of you, though, have an actual structured plan how your entire team adopts AI to accomplish your work? A little less hands there.
Concepts. I got a plan for a plan.
Well, if you had your hand up, I'd love to chat to you.
That is a FinOps audience.
So treating AI like a team member gives you a logical pathway for how to introduce it into your FinOps practice. A familiar process to lean on with clear stages, expectations, and checkpoints. The risks that the second Harvard paper raises really are mostly about how you treat AI once it's in place within your practice, not specifically about how you sort of introduce it. So both views can be sort of true at once. You need to think about AI like a hire of a teammate, but you should absolutely not think about AI as just a teammate. Today we're going to walk you through what it looks like to onboard an AI hire deliberately, give it a role, set some expectations, build trust over time, and then talk honestly about sort of what that does to your job. And by the end, we want you to walk out with a path forward, not really just how to pitch for AI, but a practical structure of sort of integrating it into your practice. But first, let's talk about the decision of whether or not to bring AI in. The State of FinOps data shows that 98% of practices are being asked to look at AI spend, which is practically all of you. And that tells us something else, is that practically all of your organizations have AI inside them. And so the question sort of worth asking up front is do you really get to choose whether to bring this team member in? And we believe not really. When we talk to practitioners, you hear these stories about like sometimes it comes in from your local management, or maybe it's your business leadership. It's like an AI mandate or an organization-wide policy on AI use. Sometimes it comes in through procurement, the tools you're already using, adding AI features. And then sometimes it walks in on Monday morning when your manager or their boss walks in with something they built on the weekend using Claude, and everyone starts asking, is our FinOps team really keeping up? And so however it arrives, the conversation has already started. The decision really isn't yours to make. It's AI's kind of joining the FinOps practice. The question is really what kind of teammate and whether or not you're the one that's what it looks like.
So first we wanted to give you a little sort of run through of what the evolution of AI in the FinOps practice might look like. So it usually starts with LLM in the browser. So if you're like me, you've got a browser window open on the other side of your screen, probably, and ask it interesting questions all day, like what's the difference between a FinOps scope and a FinOps technology category, or hey, I'm putting together a talk at an X conference about how to onboard AI onto your team. Can you help me structure that talk? Useful things like that. this is the entry point, right? This is the beginning phase, and all of us, I think, have probably gone through this based on the number of hands that went up earlier. So this is using your new AI hire as a thinking partner, right? They're not in your organization. They don't have that context yet, but they are just helping you to sort of plan. They're helping you to vet ideas. They're bringing in sort of general information to you. And this is also doing something important for you. It's building your experience in how to do prompting. It's probably, you're asking it questions. That's going to give you a better idea of what AI can answer for you in a useful way. And it's also probably going to teach you that you're terrible at asking questions. And so that is my experience as well. This paper down here, and we're going to have some of these links along the way, this paper links to an AI working group paper that talks about prompting, talks about the practice of prompting and ways that you might go about doing that. So throughout, you'll see these helpful links at the bottom. Take a shot of those and visit those later, because there's a lot of information on the website already about how to use AI in your FinOps work.
As a new hire sits in meetings, they absorb context. Their responses start to sound more like your organization rather than just a generic term. Custom instructions in system prompts really are, and style guides really do this work for an AI. They sort of lock in a tone, a format, and terminology, so output reads more like it came from your practice. The same mechanism encodes context once, and so instead of having to give it in every prompt. Things like your providers, maybe your tagging taxonomy, your business units, your physical calendar. This stops AI from asking, what do you mean by the platform team, in every conversation? And when your whole team shares these tailorizations to the AI, it sounds like you're all talking the same language when you get your responses back. So what you have at this point is a better generalist, not really a specialist. Your instructions change how the AI responds, but not really what it knows. No live data, no tool access, no memory of last week's analysis. Closing that gap is the next step.
Yeah, so generally the next step we're seeing in practices is introducing MCP. So MCP, the Model Context Protocol, again, paper down here on how to use that, how to incorporate that in your FinOps practice, really closes that copy-paste gap, right? This offloads, MCPs offload some of the creativity that's required in the AI models. Just as you would give a new hire onto your team, a human hire onto your team, access to internal systems, you'd say, start to use these systems, start to use this source data, start to look up this stuff within our environment. This is where we want our AI or our human hire to start doing real things for us in our own organization. And so it's going to answer questions in a more specific way. It's going to answer questions with refreshed and current data with information from our own systems. And that is really what we want to see. But this also brings in the really important problem of permissions and data boundaries, right? A lot of MCPs that are available today have massively open structures, or may not give you the ability to tie down or to make the access that you want as restricted as you want it to be. So be very careful as you're incorporating these MCPs into your systems.
Yeah, I think it's worth pointing out that we've seen a lot of vendors announce MCP support with their tools, and it sounds like a fairly complex topic area, but it really isn't. It's a few button clicks inside your chosen LLM provider, and now it will have access to a lot more information about your specific org. Now, as you start asking your new hires to take on repetitive tasks, you ask for it. When you ask for it, doing that task will become their responsibility. And for AI, skills is exactly that same sort of handover. You codify work that you would like them to do, and you look at something maybe like generating the weekly leadership report, the anomaly investigator, and you're turning that sequence that's living inside your head into a documented, repeatable process that the AI can execute. Skills are where those earlier pieces all start to come together. Your custom instructions shape the tone that it's going to respond with. The MCP provides the data that it needs in order to do the skills, and the skill sort of connects them to do an actual job in the right order, using the right connectors, and then how to format that response. It becomes the methodology lives in the skill rather than inside your head, and that means that new analysts joining your team can sort of execute those skills from day one. The senior people in your team aren't the bottleneck for activity to be taken. And the skill is a document, which means it can be version controlled, peer reviewed, challenged, improved. And when the output is wrong, you fix the skill once, versus doing it for every response and every interaction that you're having. And that same property is what makes agents possible, because without skills, every autonomous run is kind of improvised on the run, and without them, the behavior becomes much more predictable and an easy way for you to start to build trust.
As an old guy in technology, I'm also always amazed that we're willing to do skills, write down skills and document processes for AI, but that would have been nice to be doing all the way along. So. But once you have those skills written down and you understand those processes, then you can start to build the agents that will start to work autonomously. So once you've got all those pieces in place, automation can begin to happen. Just as you'd give a new human hire a goal, you'd say, here, this is now your responsibility. Use the processes, use the tools and the access and your understanding of our organization now to go and do that, accomplish that. Keep me out of it unless you need help, unless you need to escalate, unless there's an exception. This is where AI begins to look like a new team member, or maybe like a little part of a team member, right? Because it can accomplish something on its own. Work runs without you in the loop. Your job shifts, though, from building and gathering and collating reports to reviewing and really assessing whether those reports are right. But the response time collapses. You can oftentimes answer questions much more quickly, and this is where the team shape begins to change. It becomes you and your assistants getting this stuff. So the expectation is that these tasks are sort of managed for you, and you only get notified when there's exceptions, which is great.
And at some point, you're just asking too much of one person or one agent. The work really needs a team. You move from one generalist to becoming a group of specialists, each with its own instructions, skills, and connectors. So maybe the anomaly hunter, the commitment planner, the reporter, or the forecaster. Each one good at its job because it only does that one job. Holding the team together as an orchestrator. Requests come in, the orchestrator decides who's going to get involved. It delegates and synthesizes the results. That is what turns the pile of agents into an actual working team rather than a noisy group chat. And the team does not always have to route all of their questions through the boss. They can actually talk to each other. You might have the anomaly hunter hand a spike over to the forecaster to add that to their model. A tag auditor maybe flags an allocation gap and hands that to the reporter to include in the weekly brief. The workflow is where it needs to go. Specialization makes it much easier to maintain these agents as well, because you have a focused agent with a smaller scope, much clearer success criteria, and a shorter list of things that can go wrong. When the reporter's tone drifts, you tune the reporter, and you don't have to retrain the whole monolith. And this is where the team shape changes for real. You stop managing a tool, and you start managing a practice. Your role becomes designing the mesh, defining the roles, setting the boundaries, reviewing the work. The AI hire has become an AI team, and you're now the leader of it. This is an architectural diagram of one of the FinOps Foundation staff members. They use a handful of small gathering agents with MCP connectors to use the systems that they use every day. From there, the reporting agent generates a list of briefings, which is finally sent over to an agent to prepare the first draft of content for review, allowing the staff member to reduce a repeated task of effort they do every day of gathering and building drafts for action each morning.
You can tell a lot from how people name their agents what their viewing habits are, can't you? A little insight into the FinOps team. So that's what AI can look like in your FinOps practice when you bring it on board. The decision is made. We're all using it in our practices right now. So let's talk about how are we onboarding that AI agent onto our team. It's very similar in process, very different in practice, and understanding the differences is what's critically important to us. So we'll start with hiring.
So before you hire, you define work, what needs doing, what good looks like, which jobs matter most. That definition becomes your role, your job definition, and the role tells you which skills you're going out there to look for. For AI, it helps to sort the work into different buckets along two axes. How structured and repetitive that work is, and how much collaboration and judgment it needs. The first bucket is structured, repetitive work that needs little judgment. This is where you should tackle first with your AI. Easy wins, safest place to build confidence. The more collaboration is needed and variability increases, heavy judgment is required, humans remain the better choice over the AI. So knowing which bucket a task sits in will tell you sort of whether or not you should be handing it over, partnering on it, or keep it for yourself. Hiring a human is kind of a filtering exercise. You read resumes, you run interviews, and you're trying to match the candidate to the work you've defined. The stakes are high because if you're trying to get one shot to send out that letter of offer. From day one, you start handing off the goals and expanding their responsibilities and judging their performance on how well they move towards those outcomes. The AI resume looks different though. It claims it can do everything. It's the expert in every field. It's available at all hours, including your birthday. And will never say no. There's always an answer, whether it's right or wrong. This changes the hiring process. You can't really filter based on the AI resume because every candidate kind of looks the same. You learn what AI is good at and capable of through experimentation, and then you can chop and change models, much different to the way it works with people. And once you know what the AI is actually genuinely good at, you start matching the goals and the outcomes that fit the model itself. You judge performance not by the ambition or the reliability, but how much of the work you can actually allow it to take on and how consistently it produces the results that you're expecting.
Yeah, I think we should hire her.
Yeah.
Her resume looks very similar to mine. After hiring that new hire, though, you need to provide the AI with context. So this is, again, where we're trying to give the AI agent information about our organization. Context, not the context window, but context about your organization is not optional. It is the work. This is not an admin task of feeding these agents with the important information they need to do. So I need to give the AI context of my organization, how our cloud environments are set up, what our P&L structure is like, what our tagging taxonomy is, how I want that information to be reported to us, the language that I want it to use, the products that we support, all of that stuff. Because I don't want to get an answer like, why did our cost spikes? Well, we used 46 billion tokens last night. It's an actual number from the graphics department of the FinOps X conference this year. But I wanted to answer that new marketing campaign that we are running was successful, and we got a bunch of new people signing up for our platform, and a lot of them converted to paying customers, right? That's the useful information that we want our data to be able to provide, and that's the kind of analysis that our AI friends can do, even in the early days of hiring. So get your input to the AI agents as specific as you can, because giving it generic input is going to give you generic output, but that looks very specific, right? That sounds specific. It is convincing waste coming from the AI, and that is the most dangerous kind of wrong. So be very careful about providing all of the information that's needed ahead of time.
So when we look at this trust ladder, most teams sit at the top of the ladder today. They use AI as that thinking partner. You bounce ideas off it, ask it for a second opinion, you talk through a tricky problem. The output stays in the chat window, and you really carry the conclusions away yourself. The next rung down is kind of a research assistant. You start asking it to go find things. You still verify what it brings back, but you're no longer doing that gathering yourself. From there, it becomes an author for review. You hand over cutting that first draft of the work entirely over to the AI, and then you review and edit and send. The volume of work starts to grow on what you can actually hand out, but your judgment is still there for every output. A supervised automation is the next step. The work runs completely on its own, on a schedule or a trigger, but a human is in the loop for the result at the end. You're reviewing instead of producing, and nothing reaches the audience without your final say. And then the bottom of this ladder is kind of that trusted agent. The work runs end-to-end without you and in a loop for a routine case. And you set boundaries on it, you review for exceptions, and you check on the aggregated performance of the agent. The point of the diagram is you just don't jump from the top to the bottom. Each rung earns you the next step. The more down, you move down only when the layer above has proven itself and you've built that trust. And you can always step back up when the workflow doesn't respond the right way, or the workflow starts to change in the way you want it to.
Right. And AI trust has to be verified. When you get AI output, unlike human output, you don't proofread it. You're not looking for typos. You're not looking for grammatical errors. That stuff is behind us. You've got to interrogate it. Treat it like literary criticism, if you will. You're looking for logic gaps. You're looking for bad assumptions. You're looking for number accuracy, which is notoriously a problem. You're looking for phrasing and language that makes sense to your organization, that you're not using words that have a particular meaning in your organization. AI data is going to be extremely polished, and so resist the temptation, as you said earlier this morning, to sort of like skim it and pass it on as your own. The ultimate test here is, will you stand up in front of your CFO and take responsibility for this output yourself?
So a human learns from what you tell them, but also what they overhear, what they observe, what they absorb by just being in the room, or the Zoom call at least. Knowledge accumulates passively over months and if not years, and good people are remarkably good at recalling an important moment long, long ago. AI does not work that way, it forgets. Each interaction holds only so much context, and the model can only fit a subset of what you've told it, what it has seen before. There is a balance to strike. Memory persists from prior sessions, but its current context for the task at hand and the reference material that AI needs to consult, that all fits into that context window. And the larger the context, the higher the cost and the slower the responses. So yes, context windows are getting bigger and memory features are improving, but this gap is there. So, you should treat it as a real difference between an AI hire and a human hire. So do not assume that your AI hire remembers last week's discussion. Treat it in the way you basically need to build those important memories into the skills, into the instructions, into the connectors, so that it is available and not just hope that it remembers.
The good news here is that AIs are always infallible.
I don't know if that's right, Rob.
Oh, Mike, good catch. You're absolutely right. AIs are not always infallible. I don't know what I was thinking. I should have listened to you right the first time. Let me take another shot at reworking that title. I think, if you're like me, this is my experience with AI all the time. I think we all experience a case where AI has confidently, quickly given us an answer with great surety that we are absolutely certain is wrong. And you know that it is not there. So this has a lot of implications. It's got a lot of security considerations that we have to take into account. It's got a lot of number accuracy. We're all dealing with numbers. Anybody do the fin part of FinOps? We are constantly having to check that stuff, but it's also got a lot of trust implications. All of us in this room have been doing FinOps for 1 year, 5 years, 10 years. We have built up over that time trust in our data, trust in our analysis, trust in our outcomes. And we don't want to give that up to AIs if they are eroding that trust. So we have to be super diligent about how we evaluate this content differently from how we would evaluate human content. Remember that AIs, unlike humans, have no common sense, and they have no fear of losing their jobs.
And so one way to temper that overconfidence is to offload some of the decisions and the data out to MCPs. This reduces the creativity required for AI and provides more authoritative resources. But this brings security and access concerns as well. We've all been there before with a new hire. You give them access to a new system and you go, hey, just be careful, right? Don't break it. and a new staff member has that natural desire not to break things in their new job, and they'll often limit themselves to the buttons they will touch until they're confident they know what they do. AI has no such built-in measure. It will happily assume that if you gave it access to that button, you wanted it to use it to solve its goals. And you can add do not delete my production database to every prompt that you send into the AI, but realistically, you should be limiting your permissions out you hand out to the AI in the first place.
Overconfidence is a real risk, and so you should look to set or fix guardrails in place before you prompt. So what are some of the things you can do? You can define boundaries up front. AGENTS.md was another one of the, AGENTS.md over there was one of the other projects that was donated to the Agentic AI Foundation, now part of the Linux Foundation. So if you're developing code or developing agents, that can be an important way to do that. Or system prompts that always do spell out those always look at this, always cite my source data, never delete my production database. That's an important part to do that. Test your things in a sandbox. Test them with sandbox data. Test them in a secured environment. Many of you operate systems in validated, secure environments, systems that you've built over time with SOC compliance and other assurances around them. So introducing AI into a step in a more secured process can be an important thing to do. Also use AI to prompt itself for skepticism. That's a really fun thing to write, to get the AIs to talk about each other's stuff. Ask one AI what you thought of the other AI's output, or even ask the same AI what it thought of its own output. And it's equally critical. A lot of fun to do on a Wednesday afternoon. If you train models yourself, make sure that you're not incorporating bad data into your training models. And then use a consistent strategy for evaluating those outputs. So here's a simple one down at the bottom. Am I verifying my source data? Have I asked the model, or have I evaluated it for skepticism? Have I vetted the outputs in an appropriate way? Have this kind of a regular cadence of process that you do to evaluate your outcomes so that you're not passing on stuff that's not approved.
And so this is where the hiring analogy breaks the hardest. With a human, accountability eventually distributes. They own the work, they own the mistakes, they own their own growth. With AI, it never does. The output it produces is your output. Every recommendation it makes is you making it. Every number it got wrong, you signed off on. That single difference should shape how you operate AI. It's the main reason you walk before you run, because your ability to spot overconfidence in AI's output depends entirely on your own experience. Move slowly enough that you stay the expert in the loop. It also changes how you day-to-day work. You review the outputs, you present AI-assisted analysis to leadership, and how you think about the governance and audit trails. The AI doesn't get the performance review at the end of the quarter, you do. And so build a practice with that reality in mind.
Yeah, in the US, there's a law called Sarbanes-Oxley. Anybody know about that one? That was passed back in 2002. It requires CFOs of big corporations to personally sign their statements. I verify that this data is appropriate. Be the Sarbanes-Oxley for your AI output, right? Take that mindset that you want to really own that thing. We left off, this is a partial racy chart, and I forgot to include the informed column, which would be your CEO is always looking at all of this stuff, so crazy.
So when you hire humans, the process is intentional and the constraints are familiar. A person works 8, 10, maybe 14 hours a day. They take leave, they take breaks, and they eventually go home. The economics of getting it wrong are kind of bounded by that. AI does not have those edges. Jensen said that every engineer will work alongside 100 agents. Picture that for your team, 100 token furnaces burning around the clock, never getting tired and never logging off. And the cost is just not linear. A bad human hire is a salary line and an awkward 6 months. A bad AI use case is a meter that keeps running, scaled at scale a flawed prompt across hundreds of agents and leave it on a schedule, and the bill compounds quietly in the background until someone notices. This is exactly why onboarding analogy matters. The discipline is the same, but the consequences of skipping it are much larger. Get the role clear, build the trust slowly, verify before you scale. The cost of doing it badly with AI is not a quiet failure. It's a very loud one on your own FinOps dashboard.
Yeah. The ways to counter some of that cost scaling that's going on, know what your resources are doing, right? Keep a clear view of what agents you have built, what agents are doing, and how they are running. You don't want your AI doing the equivalent of a new human hire going off and watching the Facebooks or the TikToks or whatever it is you kids do these days. Configure budgets and alerts, anomaly detection, personal limits on your accounts, the same way you would control any other or govern any other cloud or technology use in your organization. Be an example for your organization about setting those limits. Choose sensible model sizes. Not every, I don't know if you've heard this today yet, but not every question needs to be answered by the most intelligent, most expensive agent. How many people went and made Fable 5 calls last night just to see how that worked? Yeah. And then I did a bunch of research this morning, and it punched me back to 4.6. Use that thing. So using batch saves 50% of the cost. Using a lower tier model can save you even more. Limit the depth of thought and the other tools and capabilities in the harnesses now around the model use. You need to use deep thinking wherever you go. And then watch your context windows. Pare down long chats. Ask single questions. Get rid of some of that stuff and compress. Prompt management is going to be one of the most important probably things that you'll do early in your AI use as a FinOps practitioner. And so grow those features in your workspace, your harness, to make sure that you see how that's being done in your organization. So these have been some of the steps that we would recommend to do good onboarding of an AI team member, and some of the work that you'll need to do to get it done differently than a human. Onboard AI well, and you will get good outcomes. Do it step by step. Verify as you go. And jumping ahead is the way to get confident wrong outputs flowing to stakeholders with your name all over them. And the scale of AI waste can be enormous. I'm not sure where we got this quote. It was from the internet. I think it was from Abraham Lincoln.
So building the practice is really only just the start. Just like with the human hire, there's training, there's development, there's inevitable changes to address. The work does not stop at the go live. You would not hire someone and never give them any feedback. Skills, expectation, and context all need attention over time. Maturity comes incrementally through the practice and adjustment for people and AI just alike. Your AI setups needs the same regular review. Prompts will drift, data sources will change, models will update, and just what worked last quarter can silently degrade without anyone really noticing. The team, your leadership, they're going to ask different questions. The setup that fit 6 months ago might not fit forever. And so the fix is not just a one-off project. It should be a cadence. You pick a rhythm, I don't know, monthly, quarterly, what fits your team, and then set that practice to review the skills, to retest the workflows, to prune what no longer is serving you. Build a maintenance cadence before you actually need one, because by the time you notice something's off, its drift has probably been there for quite a while.
And maybe most important, and maybe least understood, at least coming into this for me, was your human role changes as your use of AI matures. You've never done all the FinOps, right? We always say you don't do the FinOps, you enable the FinOps to be done in your organization. But managing AIs as a team, as collaborators, is much more difficult. It's much less intuitive to us right now than managing humans in that same process. There's that lack of context or memory, there's a lack of pushback, there's the explosive cost growth that can happen. These aren't quirks, these are like structural differences in the way that AI is different than humans. So be intentional about your AI use as you can. Make sure it is representing your will and your information and yourself. You have to be much more intentional and responsible with AI than you do with guys, girls. So despite all the challenges, we hope that you will start using AI in your FinOps practice more diligently. I think you said it this morning, the time to start is now, to begin to get comfortable with using AI in your practice. So we wanted to end with some specific things that you can think about doing.
So don't just start, set up a structured approach to how you're looking at it with your FinOps team.
Okay. So create that job description first. We talked about the job description at the beginning. We sort of joked about it, but this is a real thing you need to do. Gather information about what you do. Create a document, create a set of JIRA tickets, create whatever it is that you gather together about what you do on a daily basis, and keep a log of that for a couple of weeks. This is a sort of a rubric of information you might gather about that. What inputs do you use when you do the processes? What are the skills that you are building that you are using yourself? Document how you do your work and what the outcomes look like. What tools do you use? What data do you need? What are your common challenges? Who do you need to work with?
Sort your work into those buckets. Group your tasks by how structured they are and how much judgment they need. Write a one paragraph job description for one from a structured repetitive work bucket, and then pick an easy win and describe it like you would describe it to a new hire. Right. Start at the crawl stage of AI use. Pick a piece of work that's been sitting in your list. The goal is to see what AI adds to your thinking. Work it end to end and see where it actually helps.
Right, and use the tools and processes and the AI structures that your organization approves. This is so important because bringing in outside stuff often creates problems. This keeps the data and your process and your tool use inside of your own organizational boundaries, and it keeps procurement on your side and engineering and security on your side. As you do that, the free consumer tools are fine for learning about, for asking random questions. But once you're dealing with your own real data and your own real systems, keep that, use sanction tools within your organization. It's going to give you experience with your tools, and it's going to give you affinity to the engineering teams who are also having to use those tools internally.
Write a short business case and use this case and take it to your AI investment council. Should not be a side project anymore for your team. Once you can articulate the value that it's giving, you can sort of advocate for the budget to build this out.
And if your organization doesn't have an AI investment council, start one. Your use case is a great example for how the organization should be thinking about AI investments generally, and you're going to be closer to that process. So an AI investment council of some sort is an important piece. Getting all the collaborators together, all the stakeholders together to do that is important. This will also help you as you go through that process to understand, again, what your engineering teams are having to do to get their AI spending approved and managed.
Yeah, and then share what you learn at an upcoming community call. This is a large community. I think it says 100,000 on there. I think JR said 120,000 FinOps practitioners amongst the community now. And so it's really one of the few professional communities where the audience is generally your peers. Other practitioners working through the exact same problems at the exact same timeline that you are.
Right. Recently, the AI Working Group, again, put out this AI for FinOps Agentic use cases deliverable, and I would like you to take a look at that as well. We would love to have your input if you are using AI in different ways and you would like to contribute to these kinds of documents going forward. We would love to have that kind of input, and you can see how to do that in this paper here.
So this community is very much still in the early stages of AI for FinOps, and we want to hear your learnings, your wins, your ideas. This is an evolving challenge for every practitioner and every organization, and I don't think any of us has the full answer yet.
Yeah, in some ways, AI feels like the cloud transition again, but it's deeper and wider and bigger and more important, and more people are watching. So this shift that we did from data center to cloud took years to accomplish, right? We're all here on the back end of that transition, or on the second half of that transition. Maybe the shift to AI is not going to give us that long to learn.
The FinOps Foundation is not going anywhere. We're still here and still collaborating with all of you. The Tokenomics Foundation is going to be working alongside the FinOps Foundation to help dig deep into that one specific area, but we're all going to learn together as a community.
Yeah, so bring what you learn, share what you know, and collaborate with your peers. That's what we're all about here. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you all for that. We got a couple minutes left. We can take some questions. Dusty here has been aching to throw this square cube at somebody with a question. There's one in the back I see, and some over here.
Hello?
Hey.
Hey, Rob. In the presentation, you mentioned that at some point you might want to have a team of agents. At what point is it like, okay, this is a new skill for an existing agent versus, oh, this needs to be a separate agent? Like, how do you make the determination?
So I think the big thing to realize is that the thing that limits the performance of a single agent is just how much you can fit into that context. And so really, and then the types of connections you're going to give the agent. So I think, I don't think there's a clear line where it's like exactly this many things and now I need a new agent. But I do think that as an architect of the sort of set of agents, if you can find clearer boundaries around smaller subsets of work and that you can have connections that you can set permissions on tailored to that piece of work, it makes it easier for you to sort of manage that one piece of work as a single agent doing it. But also realize that you don't want to just jump into building this complex architecture of 17 agents and trying to work out how to make the orchestrator orchestrate it. So and I do think that's why it's important not to just jump down the rungs. You want to sort of learn what it's like to work with a single agent and then maybe add a second and orchestrate that and then grow it out versus, a complex architecture day one.
Yeah, building out agents seems to be more like application architecture than it is like infrastructure stuff, right? You're not piecing together infrastructure, you're actually like you're deciding, how do I break down this monolith into individual services and microservices, things like that. Oh, yeah.
If you also happen to have non-AI hires in your team, aka humans, what do you recommend for the teams to work together, agents and humans?
Yeah, and I think that's why it's the structured approach. You don't want to have each team member coming up with their own model of what they're meant to be doing. I think if you work collaboratively as a group and sort of work together, and I do think you can break off the tasks out to each other and figure out, can you get an agent to do this, solve a particular problem, but it shouldn't be allowing everybody just to run willy-nilly coming up with their own agent architecture and stuff like that. So. And I do think that's important because then the team can work together, or the human team can work together around what enrichment's there with the AI.
Yeah, it's an important question. Who's next? Yep.
So just to rephrase a used quote, all models are wrong. I think we're kind of moving into an era where it's like the practical question is now, how wrong would they need to be to not be useful? Does that, from your perspective, shift the role of FinOps practitioner to more like a FinOps governor? And if so, then are we looking at a new certification here?
I'm going to talk to the training team about that later and absolutely steal that idea. It's a super philosophical question, and I think that's as the agents that come out get smarter and smarter and cleverer and cleverer. I think that also I guess this is just my opinion, but that I think that it gets more and more difficult to spot like the inconsistencies and logic problems within them. So I do feel like that turns you into kind of a governor, right? Because there is. Generative AI is brand new, but AI and ML has been around for a long time. You don't always even need really powerful AI platforms to answer questions that you might be able to answer with machine learning or with more systematic ways of doing things. As I said before, documenting your process is something that goes all the way back to the beginning of time, not to just the beginning of AI. So I do think it changes your job, and you need to think about yourself in that role of how do I ensure that each of the agents that I'm building is as accurate as possible? Am I using something am I giving it all of the right context that it needs? Am I asking it only the right questions that I know it can answer? It's also why you choose things like, simple processes, routine processes, high repetition processes that you know what the good outcome looks like, right? That's important. Your judgment as a FinOps practitioner, when that thing says, this is what we need to do, you know that because you've made that same determination 100 times before. And so it's really easy to recognize when things are good or bad.
It's worth adding that humans are just as capable of making incorrect data as well.
Yeah, sure. Speak for yourself. Yes,
Hi. Could you expand on what you mean by giving the AI organizational context in advance so it can learn? What does that look like? Do we upload the structure, the organization? What does that look like?
So it can be range from anything from just detailing details about your organization into the prompt, into the skill, or it could go the next step, which is to connect it with MCPs to your actual organization data. You've seen from some of the providers and the vendors in the space that having MCP connections back to your cloud bureau is one example where they're able to actually answer questions by looking physically at your cloud bureau and not just guessing based on assumptions. That stops you from having to do that copy-paste into the prompt window, getting a report and putting it in and asking about it. You could ask it just to go and look itself. And then, effectively, the more you connect in and the more data you pour into that context window, the more it's answering based on what it can actually see for realsies versus what it's kind of just making up because it's not there.
Yeah, it's oftentimes good to put, even putting in an org chart, right? These are the people in the organization, these are their responsibilities, these are the job codes that they use, these are their cost centers, this is how I do reporting to them, these are their team members, that kind of stuff. Any of that information that's authoritative, you're providing, and that helps the AI to not have to make any of that stuff up or make assumptions.
The way I think about it is if I'm answering this question, what information do I need to know? So if I want to escalate this to that person's boss, the org tree is what I need to know, and then I can think, well, how do I get that context of the org tree into the actual, into the window?
Right. All right, we're up against our break. I appreciate all of you asking questions. We'll be available for other things up here if you'd like to see us, and thank you all for coming. Thank you.
Hey everyone, producer Andrew here. Thanks for watching. Check out the rest of our channel for more FinOps content. Like, subscribe, and leave questions and comments for our speakers. We appreciate your support.